Welcome to Chapter 3, Session 9 of The One Hope of Original Christianity, The Tribulation and Wrath, Part 1. Wait a minute, that sounds strange. Welcome to the tribulation and welcome to the wrath? Oh, no, I mean to the session of this class. I certainly would not want to wish this future upon anyone, but it's coming nonetheless, because justice must be done. The time will come for the ultimate consequences of sin. Amidst all this awesomeness and magnificence regarding the book of Revelation, I have to state something else too. Just because I'm reporting all this to you does not make me important, because I've said before, I'm God's fault. I should have died when I was 12 years old, when I almost fell off a cliff, but I inexplicably stopped going over the edge, and I, scrambling up to the canyon's edge trail with a big why burning in my mind, wondering, had no answer then. Why was I spared? I now know, because after that point, because He saved me, I belong to Him. We are standing upon the shoulders of those Bible researchers that have gone before us, men and women who poured their life's work into studies and teachings and reference books that we now use to reach higher highs. I would be less without them, and I'd be nothing without God, who has brought me to the tools and the facts that I needed when I needed them to bring me to this plateau. And that's why I respect my peers who have approached the book of Revelation the same way as I, asking God for help. Please show us the keys we need to explain this to our people. Please help us dispel their fears. And the master key turned out to be something unexpected, which was the role of repetitions in Scripture. One of my predecessors could have found that. One of my peers could have found that. So I won't forget that, it's God's fault. Anyway, in the last session, I finished the first section of the Hereafter, which was in chapter 4, verse 1 through chapter 8, verse 5. It's framed by the first two repetitions of that phrase, lightnings, voices, and thunderings, and contains the first set of sevens, the seven seals. These released all the processes that run throughout the rest of the sixth administration. This happened at the first convocation around God's throne, which will occur shortly after the gathering together. All of the indicators point to it occurring at that early pivotal time. The four horsemen being released because we believers have been taken out of the way, the 144,000 being the first fruits of the sixth administration, and even the sixth and seventh seals being postponed until the 144,000 could be called and sealed. Because that accumulation of 12,000 new Messianic Jews from each tribe will take some time to bring together. Meanwhile, the adversary will be working at full speed to bring the Antichrist onto the world stage. Since he doesn't have foreknowledge, he's had to be ready with candidates in each generation to take over the world when we believers are gathered together. Then after the 144,000 have been sealed, the sixth and seventh seals will be opened, which will release the legal causes for tribulation and wrath to occur. So, the vision of the first heavenly convocation that John witnessed spanned elements of the entire sixth administration, because that vision was timeless. The same is true of the seventh seal, which is like the other sevens, and it ushers in the next section of the book. Time is immaterial. There are more important issues at work here than even time. But I do need to clarify something. Is God going to do these terrible things to earth and its inhabitants? Or is He going to permit it? Well, some things the angels are going to do, but other things are going to be permitted. Remember 2 Thessalonians chapter 2? Look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 again. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come an apostasia, a departure first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's his goal, worship. Remember you not that when I was yet with you I told you these things? And now you know what restrains, that he might be revealed in his time. There's a time that's his time. Interesting. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now restrains will restrain until he be taken out of the way, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. See, the adversary is itching for this moment when he will have free reign, and then he will rain torment upon the earth, because he knows his reign is coming to an end. The four horsemen was a figurative way of expressing this release. There won't be anything to stop him. And he probably will use chaos to facilitate his takeover. You've heard of the political advice, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Well, many political power grabs have occurred in the shadows of a crisis when people are distracted. Another trick is the use of proxies. Let a third party be a threat for a while to distract while the real agenda is being forwarded. Satan is a master at this. But why won't the world believe in the true God then? Many have asked, won't it be obvious when all the Christians go poof and disappear? Well, perhaps not if the adversary immediately causes some calamity. Remember, when believers get up out of their graves, I don't believe the ground is going to open up to let them out. They're just going to zap up through it like Jesus did when he dematerialized out of his grave wrappings. So there's not going to be open holes over graves, so those left behind will know what happened. But the Christians who are alive will be missed, certainly. Satan may cause widespread chaos to try to hide what happened, but nevertheless, some people will notice. That could be a troubling thought, to have seen all your Christian friends suddenly vanish and then realize it was the gathering together. That might make believers out of some, but they're going to be sheep without a shepherd until the 144,000 show up. But the rest of the unbelievers will be unprotected from the adversary. 2 Thessalonians 2 goes on to say in verse 9, even him whose coming is after the energization of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. Now that word all there is an idiom in Greek. It means all the different kinds of, from soup to nuts. So he's going to throw the kitchen sink at them. With all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be judged, who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Well, now, will God actually send that strong delusion, or will he permit it to be sent? This language fits with the Hebrew idiom of permission. Those of you who have older versions of Young's Concordance in the front, there is a Hints and Helps to Bible Interpretation section, and number 70b in the list is the idiom of permission, where it says, Hebrew active verbs frequently imply the permission of the action, and it gives examples. Original Christianity was Semitic in origin and had its roots in the Hebrew Bible. Romans corroborates this idiom of permission. Look at Romans 1:18. Romans 1:18. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest to them. For God has showed it to them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they're without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things." Here is the idiom, verse 24. "Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature, the things of the creation, more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen." It says God gave them up. Why? Because he'd have to break his word to do anything else. He makes his sun to shine on and the rain to fall on the just and the unjust, but that only goes so far. If anyone continues to defy him, ultimately, they're going to hit a brick wall. So the residue of humanity after the gathering together will not be inclined to believe God. It'll be similar to what happened to the Jews in the first century. Because before the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, the Jewish branch of the Christian church had grown at the expense of Judaism. More and more Jews were converted to Christianity over the years, until only the radical elements were left in Judaism. They'd been hardened and deceived by Phariseeism, while the more moderate and genuine had seen the light and been converted to Christianity. No wonder those left thought they could defy the Roman Empire in the Jewish revolt of 66 AD. Largely, only the radical elements of Judaism were left in control, and they deceived themselves. There certainly were still some moderates left, but they were not in a position of influence. So similarly, when all the genuine Christians will be gone, only unbelievers will be left after the gathering together, and they will be at the mercy of the adversary's whims, and he has no mercy. What will he do? Well, what did Satan do before, when he had control of the earth? Genesis 6:5 says that at that point the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. How dark was that? So, what did the adversary do? What did he try to do when he had so much influence then? Kill off everyone. That's the cause of the flood, and Satan's top angels, who kept not their first principality, were responsible, and God locked them up in chains because of it. So is it any wonder when he has free reign again what he will do? Knowing his time is short, he will try to take as many down with him as he can. Do you get the picture? There is some useful information in the article I put on Way Beyond by Ranko Stefanovic, titled "Finding Meaning in the Literary Patterns of Revelation." He wrote that there is, quote, information that's embedded in various passages of Revelation. It suggests that the inspired author has clearly defined his intention regarding the understanding of the text, unquote. Well, that's correct. John the Apostle embedded clues. The first century believers were used to looking for the clues. He also gave some more valuable info on the book, which is proof that it is not chronological. He has something about recapitulative or repetitive structure. Recapitulative is telling the story from a different perspective. A number of repetitive structures can be observed in Revelation, Stefanovic says, that fall into the groups of seven churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. A critical problem for the interpreters is the question whether these 3 septenaries, or he's getting fancy there, groups of 7, should be understood as parallel or recapitulatory accounts of the same events, or as a continuous or progressive chronological sequence of end-time events, in which the trumpets follow on from the seals and the bowl plagues from the trumpets. It was Victorinus of Petau, who died around 304 AD, who introduced the principle of recapitulation in Revelation, and this has been followed with some modification by subsequent interpreters, Stefanovic says. The recapitulative parallels between the seals and trumpets series appear to be evident. A comparison between the 2 series shows their parallel structures. So, in the 7 seals, there were 4 horsemen. In the 7 trumpets, there were 4 trumpets. Then, in the 7 seals, there are the 5th and 6th seal. Then, there's the 5th and 6th trumpets that are called woes themselves. Then there's an interlude, the sealing of the 144,000 in the section of the seals. And there is an interlude in the 7 trumpets section, where it deals with the little scroll, the measuring of the temple, and the 2 witnesses. Then the 7 seals gets back to the 7th seal, and then the 7 trumpets ends up with the 7 trumpets. So there is a parallel structure there. It can be observed, Stefanovic says, that both the trumpets and the seals are arranged in groups of 4, 2, and 1. Also, the series are interrupted by interludes between the 5th and the 6th seal and the trumpets, respectively. So, very interesting there. So, there's some tantalizing parallels among the sections which contain the groups of 7s. But there are associated events sequential, or are those recapitulative, retelling the story from a different perspective? In order to answer this question and properly place things on our timeline, let's review what we know. The 7 seals occur early in the 6th administration. Then Jesus' sequential account in the Olivet Discourse places the tribulation next, and immediately after the tribulation, Jesus foretells of astronomical events. This is where the 7 trumpets begin, because the first 3 trumpets contain astronomical material. So, since Jesus' Olivet Discourse is chronological, we can construct our timeline around it. So, go to Matthew 24, please. Matthew 24, verse 4. Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." This corresponds to 2 Thessalonians 2, when the wicked one is revealed. He will be one of them that says, I am Christ. It is possible because the first 5 seals are released soon after the gathering together. Then, Matthew 24, verse 6, Jesus said, "You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in many places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." This is the build-up to the tribulation period. The adversary simultaneously will be on the rise, consolidating power, taking over kingdom after kingdom on earth. Meanwhile, at the same time, the 144,000 shall have been sealed and have begun their missionary work, spreading the gospel of the sixth administration. Then, later in this build-up period, persecutions of believers will arise because of Satan's increasing power over the governments of this world. Then, Matthew 24, verse 9, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Which gospel is this? It's the gospel of the sixth administration. Which kingdom? The kingdom which shall be on earth, ruled by Jesus Christ the Messiah. Remember, one of the elements of the gospel of the sixth administration is that Jesus Christ is worthy. He will be the one that will be worthy of the rule in that kingdom. So now we reach a pivotal event in the timeline. It's still the tribulation period, and then the abomination of desolation occurs. Matthew 24, verse 15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso reads, let him understand. Then it's time to beat it. Let them be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath days. For then shall be great tribulations, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Wow. So this is the great tribulation. The talk about those days locks that in, because those days is repeated. There's one of them in verse 19, and there's two of them in verse 22, and then there's one of them in verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days. You see, those days, those days, those days. Now, my English teacher would have marked that up with red ink, but back then, that's what they did. Isn't that interesting? That's a repetition. Let's see here. Let's read Matthew 24:29. Matthew 24:29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. This is the lead-in to the seven trumpets, because the seven trumpets mentions this. So, many eschatologists have pointed to an Old Testament prophecy about this time called Jacob's trouble. Look at Jeremiah 30. Jeremiah chapter 30. Jeremiah 30, verse 1. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord God of Israel, saying, Write thee all the words that I have spoken unto thee in a book. For lo, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel and Judah, saith the Lord, and I will cause them to return to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall possess it. And these are the words that the Lord spoke concerning Israel and concerning Judah. For thus saith the Lord, We have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. Ask you now, and see whether a man doth travail with child, Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all the faces are turned to paleness. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and the strangers shall no more serve themselves of him, but they shall serve the Lord their God, and David their king, whom I will raise up unto them. So this is a prophecy. It's a prophecy about Jacob's trouble that fits with the tribulation period. The pivotal moment in Jesus' prophecy is the event of the Abomination of Desolation. And in order to explain this, we must go to the book of Daniel, as Jesus specified in Matthew 24:15. But there are 4 prophecies in Daniel which mention desolation, and 3 of them include the word abomination. Well, which one is Jesus referring to? I'm going to include a white paper on the prophecies of Daniel on Way Beyond, but tonight I'm going to give a summary. There are many prophecies in the Bible, but the detailed prophecies in the book of Daniel are among the most interesting and influential in the Bible. Many students of the Bible over centuries have been drawn to this book in an effort to understand these predictions. Parts of them have already been fulfilled, and the outcomes were so accurate that critics have charged that scribes added the details after the fact. There are 9 prophetic sections in the book of Daniel, some of which have astrological import. Many students of the Bible from many backgrounds and levels of knowledge have applied what they knew in an effort to decipher these predictions. The result has been a wide range of theories and claims. These have resulted in chronological scenarios pointing to event fulfillments from medieval times through our modern era. But the abomination of desolation during the tribulation that Jesus spoke of hasn't occurred yet. We do not even have an official Jewish temple yet. But if a Jewish temple were constructed in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, it would foment instant war, for the Islamic nations of the world regard this as one of their holiest sites. However, Dr. Ernest Martin has cast doubt on the current location. He says that instead it is actually the fortress of Antonia. The real location of the temple is nearby on land available to build anytime. Jesus said not one stone would be upon another, but the present day Wailing Wall, which people claim is part of the temple, sure looks like stones still on one another. Another key prophecy fulfillment has already occurred in 1948, when the nation of Israel was formed. The next key fulfillment will occur when the 3rd temple in Jerusalem is constructed. That actually could happen anytime if they follow Dr. Martin's findings. But without understanding dispensationalism and the Great Mystery, many predictions have missed the mark. Another related concept to the Great Mystery or secret is the role of the Jews in the Age of Grace since Pentecost. The current role of the Jews is revealed in Romans 11, which I covered in another session. Romans 11 also declares that the Jews will once again be favored by God after the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. But I must ask about the Jews who will be favored again. Will they be the institutions of Judaism that exist today? I don't know if they will inherit this mantle or not, because there will be one big difference between then and now. The future Jews in the book of Revelation will have accepted Jesus as their Messiah. They will be new Messianic Jews, as I call them. Will the present Jewish institutions convert? Well, that may happen. Some influential Jewish leaders may realize what happened at the gathering together and convince many to convert. But, according to the prophecy, there will still be synagogues persecuting the new believers. So, not all Jews will convert. But we do know that by whatever means, God will call the 144,000. They will be new Messianic Jews, and they will be the missionaries to that era. I believe the sixth administration will span their generation. It is with this introduction that I now turn to Daniel. These prophecies are exclusively concerning the Jews, not the church. The first prophecy is Daniel chapter 2. This is the dream Nebuchadnezzar dreamed and forgot about. So he commanded his wise men to tell him both the dream and its meaning. And if the wise men couldn't do so, they'd all be killed. Well, Daniel found out about that, and it would have been his head too. And so he asked for prayer to be made. He got the answer of what the dream was and the interpretation. God revealed it to him. So he went to tell the king. And so we pick up the account at this point in Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. Thou, O king, saw and beheld a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was awesome. The image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till a stone was cut without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath he made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these shall break in pieces and bruise. Verse 41, and whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, forasmuch as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Forasmuch as thou sawest the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So, this prophecy and the interpretation is pretty clear. Nebuchadnezzar in the Babylonian kingdom is the head of gold. The Persian Empire is the breast of silver. Alexander the Great and his generals are the Greek Empire is the torso of brass. And the Roman Empire is the legs of iron. The Roman Empire did split in two, so that fits with half iron and half clay. And the rock made without hands is the Messiah, whose kingdom began during the Roman Empire. But it predicts that the kingdom of the Messiah would have no end. How is this so? The key factor that many commentators don't realize is that the Church of Grace, that time period, was hidden in God as part of the mystery. No one, not even Jesus, knew the mystery till it was revealed. And it wasn't revealed to anyone in the Old Testament or the Gospel era. So the prophet Daniel certainly could not have foreseen that, even though the kingdom of heaven would have no end, it was to be temporarily interrupted by a time period that was still secret at the time of that prophecy. Daniel's second vision is found in chapter 7. So turn to chapter 7 of Daniel. As we read this second vision, a certain symbolic vocabulary will start to emerge. In the imagery presented, beasts are kingdoms, and horns are kings. The sea, as in other passages, is the evil spirit realm. This symbolism carries through the rest of the book and influences the prophecies in the book of Revelation. I'm going to submit another paper to Way Beyond, in which I will present the glossary of these terms. Some of the terms we know, and some of the terms we don't. So we're believing to expand our understanding of those. Daniel chapter 7 in verse 1. Daniel 7 verse 1. In the first year of Belteshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. So these four beasts represent four kingdoms, and they're rising up from the spiritual realm, the sea. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I beheld the wings thereof were plucked, and as was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. And after this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. And the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So these are all symbolic, full of symbolism. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up another with them, another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes, like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, and his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Wow. See, some of these things we've seen in the book of Revelation so far. Some of them are still to come. Verse 11, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people and nations and languages should serve him. And his dominion is an everlasting kingdom which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Wow. Very interesting, isn't this? Just full of symbolism. I, Daniel, verse 15, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the kings. These great beasts which are four kings, which shall rise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which is diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured broken pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and to think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. That's real clear, isn't it? No, this is prophecy speak. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. So, this is a still future event, and it fits with the book of Revelation, chapter 13. Verse 13 and 14 contain important details regarding the coming in the clouds, but that absolute cannot be the gathering together, because that was part of the mystery. This coming is tied with the judgment and the millennial kingdom. It's the same thing mentioned in Matthew 24. And see, this is where Ranko Stefanovic brought up about that recapitulative nature of the sections of the book of Revelation. The third section of the book of Revelation that we're going to get into in another session details all these things we just read in this prophecy about how the Antichrist will arise. He will be conquering the world during the build-up to the tribulation period, and during the tribulation period, taking advantage of all the chaos. He will impersonate the Messiah, and he will be worshipped in the temple, like 2 Thessalonians predicts. All right? So some of the other details garnered from this prophecy is that there will be 10 kings that shall arise out of this last kingdom, and the other that shall arise after them shall subdue 3 of the 10. Now, this would be difficult to accomplish sequentially in the space of 7 years. That would be impossible, I would think. And it would even be difficult within the space of 1 generation. Like Jesus said, this 1 generation shall not pass, unless the 10 kingdoms were simultaneous vassal states in one worldwide kingdom. It is said that the 4th kingdom will encompass the whole earth. So that's what I think, that these 10 kings are not sequential. They are simultaneous as different portions of that one world government. And then it said that one of the 10 will take over 3 of the 10. Well, that would leave 7. So I believe that 1 of the 10 is the Antichrist rising up. He will make war against the believers in verse 21. He will be defeated, judged, and destroyed in verse 11 and 26. One like the Son of Man will come in the clouds, and the Old Testament saints will be given the dominion over the whole one world kingdom, as described in verses 13, 14, and 27. So that's this next prophecy. Then the next one in Daniel is Daniel chapter 8. This contains a vision that's mixed. Part of it has already come to pass, but the other elements are still future. This vision in Daniel 8 is unique because it was given a name: the vision of the evening and the morning. Daniel 8:26. That implies that it has 2 parts. There's a time break in the middle of this vision between the things past and the things still future. But it mentions a, quote, transgression of desolation. Is this the prophecy that Jesus was referring to? Well, we'll see. I taught about this in an earlier session, so I'll summarize. But you'll get the details in my Daniel handout. In Daniel 8, the ram in verse 3 represented Media and Persia. Then in verse 5, the male goat from the west that moved so fast he could not touch the ground was Alexander the Great from Greece. He conquered Media and Persia, and when he was still strong, this horn was broken. Alexander died in the prime of life, and the 4 horns that came up represented how his kingdom was split between his generals. These kingdoms expanded and contracted with regard to each other over generations, particularly the Ptolemy, Ptolemy kingdom in Egypt, and the Seleucid kingdom in Syria. The Seleucid kingdom expanded toward the south and the east and overtook Israel, which had belonged to the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt. Then the figurative casting down of some of the host that's mentioned is the Seleucid dynasty spread Hellenism and eliminated other pagan religions and cultures. Then in verse 11, the Seleucid king Antiochus Epiphanes desecrated the temple in Jerusalem and ordered the daily sacrifice ceased. A time period is given for this, quote, transgression of desolation in verses 13 and 14. So let's read Daniel 8:13. Daniel 8:13. I heard one saint, which is an angel, speaking, and another saint, an angel, said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation be? This is the reference to the Abomination of Desolation, I believe. To give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days. That's exactly 78 lunar months. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now, this 2,300 days, I believe it's 2,300 literal days, because I was able to fit that with the accounts of Antiochus Epiphanes and the desecration of the temple and Hanukkah, all of that. I did that in a prior session. Then an angel appears and gives Daniel understanding concerning the vision. But then the angel goes on to give more information, beginning at verse 23. Daniel 8:23. And in the latter time of their kingdom, so there's a time break, when the transgressors are come to the full, so there's fulfillment language. The seals are released in Revelation when this happens. A king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. This is the same king as in the Daniel 7 vision, the one that took over 3 other kingdoms. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people, and through his policy also he shall cause deceit to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many, and he shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes. This would be the King of Kings, future title of Jesus, but he shall be broken without hand. This is all still future. And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So, this prophecy has 2 parts. The first part is up through Antiochus Epiphanes and a desecration of the temple, an abomination of desolation. Then it breaks off and has that time descriptor that talks about a different time, and in the latter time of their kingdom, it says. And so then there's a second half of it that's still future. This is the 2 parts, vision of the evening and the morning. So I believe the first part has come to pass with Antiochus Epiphanes, and the second part is still future, and it gives more information about the Antichrist in the book of Revelation. Now, I also have a study on the Abomination of Desolation, which I will put on Way Beyond as well. But one prominent feature of the first portion, which has already come to pass, is that gives that time span of 2,300 days. If you do a comparison with the book of Maccabees, it doesn't fit the total length of time that the temple was actually desecrated, which was 3 years. But it says it also includes the phrase trodden underfoot back there in Daniel 8. So in the handout, I show the details of how soldiers from Damascus on their way to a battle in Egypt passed through Jerusalem and trod it underfoot. And so the 78-month period fits. Because of all the corroborating information, I believe that the first portion of this vision has already come to pass, and Antiochus Epiphanes, therefore, was a type for the Antichrist, like there's a type and an anti-type. So, let's take a break here. Let's take a break, and we'll continue with Daniel after the break. Bless you.